Code provided by Square Enix. Recently, I've been playing Visions of Mana, the latest game in the Mana series, in almost 2 decades. Yeah, for Mana fans, they haven't gotten a new game for quite a while, as the more recent releases have been remasters or remakes. And I wasn't too sure if I was going to make a video on this particular game until I requested for a review code, and graciously enough, Square Enix did give me a review code to take a look at Visions of Mana. So I have to give some thanks to Square Enix for allowing me to take a look at Visions of Mana. And just as a disclaimer, I was not paid by Square Enix, I was simply given a review code. So once again, thank you to Square Enix, and before we dive right in, make sure you go on and hit that subscribe button. It's free, you might as well do it, and I really do appreciate it. So, in terms of my experience with the Mana series before we go deep into Visions of Mana, it's not really much. I've played Final Fantasy Adventures, I played the remake of Seiken Densetsu 3, otherwise known as Trials of Mana, and I played a bit of Secret of Mana, though I do eventually want to go back and play that game to completion, just so I have the first 3 games under my belt. And overall, I found them to be relatively fun action RPGs. I don't think they're really changing much, they're really innovating all too crazy enough, but I just find them relatively fun. And I feel the same way with Visions of Mana. I don't see it as a game that's crazily innovating on the space of action RPGs. I just find it to be a fun action RPG with a great art style. And speaking on the combat system in Visions of Mana, I think it's relatively close to Trials of Mana, though I haven't played that game in quite a while, so don't quote me on that right there. But you have a normal attack, you have your special attacks, you have dodge rolls, and you can go out and go into menus to select magic or special spells, and you can also do a super attack when you attack enemies. And I have to say, the combat flows relatively nicely. You can do air attacks, you can attack from the ground, and then you can go up into the air. These characters feel relatively mobile in comparison to Trials of Mana, to where even though I felt the combat there, from what I can remember at the very least, be relatively fun. And that's why I think, in my opinion, even though I don't remember too much about Trials, that Visions does have the edge over Trials just because of how well everything flows. You can go from the ground and then go up into the air, and then you can go back to the ground and attack from there. And I think that's also because each character also has a double jump, as this game, when it comes down to exploration, is relatively platforming heavy. And obviously when it comes down to action RPGs, with platforming, sometimes things work, sometimes things don't. But I think for the most part, the platforming in Visions of Mana works relatively well. These characters control relatively tightly, and even though they're no Mario in any way, you're not slipping and sliding anywhere. Everything kind of feels tight when it comes down to basic platforming or exploring the world. And that's the other thing I like about this game, which is the world exploration. That's the one thing I like to see when it comes down to a game that allows you to explore this world, is trying to invite you to explore this portion of the locale or that location. And they incentivize that by finding treasure that's scattered around the area that you can easily find on your minimap, or you can just simply explore and then you see this little area and you're like, hey, I want to check that out. That's kind of just the basics of a game that encourages exploration, and Visions of Mana does that just fine. Though I wouldn't say Visions of Mana is an open world game, it's more kind of like Dragon Quest XI, to where areas are sectioned off, and while you can explore these smaller areas, it doesn't feel like an open world game for sure. It feels more linear in comparison, but they still allow you that exploration to explore each area at your heart's content. Though I would say, in comparison to Dragon Quest XI, I do think Visions does it a little bit better, just simply because these characters are better in the platforming department. And so far, I've only unlocked 2 characters in my adventure. I beat 1 boss so far. Well, there's also a prologue boss, but I kind of don't count that because that's meant to teach you how to play the game. So in reality, I've only really beaten 1 regular boss. And once again, I just find the combat to be relatively fun, I find the exploration to be relatively nice, and I find everything ties all together just because of how well these characters move. And also there's other things to the game itself. You can equip spells, you can equip armor, you can equip weapons, all typical stuff from an RPG. There's also side quests, which for the most part they feel kind of fetch questy, where you go to one location and then you come back and get the MacGuffin and then you clear up the side quest. I'm probably going to assume later side quests will allow you to do more things, but for now I definitely notice them to be a bit more fetch questy in a sense. And also there's a class system where you can change your character's class and their attributes and their movements will change in the battlefield. And I've only changed one of my character's classes, and it definitely feels quite different in comparison to their regular class. Though I don't really have much to say that because how far I am in the game, which is 2.5 hours, I'm kind of scratching that surface. And even the exploration, I feel like I'm scratching the surface because over time you'll unlock new things that allow you to explore different areas in the overworld. And also there's things across the overworld that you know for a fact you can't access just yet until much later into the game. So overall, I do feel that I'm just scratching the surface with the amount of time I've put into this game. But I wanted to give my impressions right away just because, like I said, I've been enjoying this game. I find the game to be relatively fun, and everything that ties it together is that combat and the platform. And also graphically, I have to say this game looks beautiful. The environments look lavish, the lighting is amazing, the character models are on point. Though aside from the presentation, I do find the presentation to be a little bit weak. Character animations and movements, aside from the more important cutscenes, seem to be relatively stilted and janky in a sense. I wouldn't say it's a major detraction to the game, it's just something I noticed that in smaller cutscenes, the characters don't really animate as beautifully as they do in the bigger cutscenes. But I get it, budget and everything like that. Though, the more disappointing thing for me is really the music. Because I played Trials of Mana and I thought Trials of Mana had a fantastic score. It was upbeat, it made you want to go out and explore these locations, it was a fun soundtrack. And Visions kind of goes with a more melodramatic soundtrack. Everything feels more mellow, everything feels more calm. And some songs do hit for me, but for the most part, I don't really remember that many songs during my experience with Visions of Mana. Maybe as I play more through this game, I'll find a track that hits with me, but definitely in comparison to past Mana games, especially Trials of Mana, I do find this soundtrack to be weak in a sense. And the last thing I'll mention is I did get this game on PC. Square Enix gave me a Steam code to go on and play this game. And I have to say the PC options are relatively limited. Aside from the display options and the control options, the graphics options are minimal. You can only change it from low, medium to high. You can't have a customizing setting where you can change the anti-aliasing, level of detail, anything like that. Everything is all preset, unfortunately. Though it doesn't really matter for me, personally, just because my PC is relatively powerful, and playing it on high settings, I was able to play this relatively smooth at 144 FPS. It's not a big deal for me, but for people who want to tinker with their settings, yeah, you're going to be disappointed by the lack of options, aside from the display settings where they allow you to turn off VSync, change the refresh rate, all the fun stuff right there, but you're not going to be able to change much in the graphics department. And that's all I have to say about Visions of Mana. Once again, I have to thank Square Enix for allowing me to take a look at this game and providing me a review code, and overall I'm having a great time with Visions of Mana. I find the combat to have a nice flow, the exploration works just primarily due to the platforming. But anyways, if you guys have Visions of Mana, whether you bought the game yourself or you're borrowing it from a friend or you played the demo, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. And don't forget to leave this video a like and subscribe as well. And you want to see more videos, do check out these videos right here. I personally think you'll enjoy them. See you guys on the next one. Take care.